Hey, how are you? My name is Felt. Welcome back to Final Fantasy XIV. Today I'm going to be talking about Monk, someone who remained Monk throughout the entirety of the Savage tier. I just wanted to talk about the job as a whole and essentially create a giant boot camp for people who don't quite get Monk, what it's about, what it does, and how to play it. Clearly the number of people is high, because Monk is actually one of the least played jobs in the current Savage tier. And I don't mean just like the least played melee, I mean it's one of the least played jobs. There seems to be some form of barrier preventing people from wanting to play the job, and hopefully I can help break that barrier down, because I believe Monk is in a phenomenal state right now, and it's one of the most fun jobs in the game. Let's hop right into it. Okay, let's start by talking about the very, very basics of Monk. Something that often confuses people is that Monk doesn't have combos. A lot of other jobs, you hit one button, the next one in order starts lighting up and flashing, and you go down a combo string until it is over. Tanks are a great example of this, as they all typically have a 1-2-3 combo, and sometimes have an alternate ending version that applies a damage buff or a damage over time or something. Monk is very different from that, and it's very different from the other melees in that you don't have combos, you just have 3 forms that you will be cycling through and doing different things with. There's the Oppo Oppo form, which is Bootshine, Dragon Kick, Shadow of the Destroyer, or at lower levels I believe it has a different name. It is Armor of the Destroyer at lower levels. There's the Raptor form, which is True Strike, Twin Snakes, 4-point Fury. Then there's Curl form, which is Snap Punch, Demolish, Rockbreaker. Now, how does this work? Well, if you use one button in the form, let's just start with Dragon Kick, you shift to the next form. Let's use Twin Snakes, so we shift to the next form. Use Demolish, we shift to the next form. You just go through the forms in order. But because of that, Monk is somewhat free-flowing in the nature that it works. Because you are simply shifting through your forms, the buttons that you push change up a bunch. And what leads me to my next point and how I think about Monk as a job, which helps me wrap my head around it better. So Monk has what I think of as a quote-unquote buffing GCD in each form, and then a quote-unquote raw damage GCD in each form. Now, what do I mean by quote-unquote buff? I say quote-unquote because not all of the buffing GCDs are truly buffing GCDs. Let's talk about Raptor, because in my opinion that's the easiest to get your head around to get this conversation started. Raptor form has Twin Snakes. Twin Snakes legitimately gives you a 15% damage buff when you hit it when you're in Raptor form. So that is the buff GCD for Raptor, just the one that gives you an additional effect, if that checks out. And this is just how my brain focuses about it, and I think that maybe explaining how I think about it might help other people get to the same conclusions, or at least a similar one. It is the buff one. It gives you an increased damage amount. Then, for Curl form, the buff GCD is Demolish, because it applies an additional effect. It applies the damage over time. It is not a raw damage GCD, it is a quote-unquote buff GCD. That's how I think about it. These are also the GCDs that you don't need to be hitting every time, you just need to be hitting them when they're going to be running out, or you don't have the effect. That's why I think about them in this way. Like, if my damage buff is going to run out, of course I'll hit Twin Snakes. If my damage over time is going to run out, of course I'm hitting Demolish. That's why I think of them this way. For Oppo form, it's a little different, because it's not a damage buff increase or a damage over time. It is giving you an effect that you will use on your other version. Dragon Kick, if you use it under Oppo, gives you the Leaden Fist buff, which makes your boot shine, gain 100 potency, and guarantee a crit. Which sounds a little strange, because you're like, well, but wait, like Dragon Kick is higher potency at base level. Yeah, but guaranteed to crit. You're guaranteed to crit. That will almost always be more damage unless you're getting very, very lucky. That's how my brain thinks about this. This top level here are the buttons that you push when you have no reason to apply a buff, or you already have the buff. These are your raw damage GCDs, like my Boot Shine, I have Leaden Fist, I'll hit Boot Shine. I have more than enough time left on Discipline Fist, I hit True Strike. My dot isn't going to fall off, I hit Snap Punch. Oh, I need to get a Boot Shine proc, use Dragon Kick. Oh, I need to reapply my damage buff, Twin Snakes. Oh, I need to reapply my dot, Demolish. If that makes sense, that's how I think about it. And now, there is a bit of a weirdness about that. If you'll notice, I'm going to go through my rotation, like my basic 1-2-3 rotation here, and you'll notice that the timers are a little weird. 15 seconds on Discipline Fist, but then there's 18 seconds on Demolish, right? So, like, you can't do the classic Dragoon, where, like, every other rotation you apply Demolish, and every other rotation you're applying Twin Snakes. It operates on a 2 to 3 operating system. Now, what does that mean? It means that every second time you go through your rotation, you'll hit Twin Snakes, and every third time you go through, you hit Demolish. However, that's not an easy way of thinking about it. Now, watch this right here. Okay, I have 12 seconds left on Disciplined Fist, no reason to reapply it. 15 seconds on Demolish, no reason to reapply it. Okay, let's see. Oh, I have less than 7. I have less than 7 seconds of Disciplined Fist. I should reapply it. Oh, I didn't have less than 5 of Demolish? I don't care. Oh, I have less than 5 Demolish? Reapply it. You'll notice that, like, in place of thinking, oh, every second or every third, my brain doesn't, like, work like that. It doesn't like that. So the way that I think about it, and a tip that I've heard before, was that if you have less than 7 seconds on Twin Snakes, you should be reapplying it. And if you have like 5 or 6 seconds left on Demolish, you should be reapplying it. If you're not someone that does a good job of getting into pure pattern recognition of every second time I Twin Snakes, every third time I Demolish, just go off your timers. If you have less than 7 seconds, get more damage buff. If you have less than 5 seconds, reapply your dot. That was a really long section of this video to just talk about forms and the basics of your 1-2-3 combo, but that is really important to Monk, because Monk is at its core mostly just a constantly hitting these GCDs over and over and over again. And if you're not confident and comfortable in doing that, you're not going to like the job, which is why I'm giving you an alternate way of thinking about it. If you understand the idea of every other combo you use Twin Snakes and every third combo you use Demolish, think about it like that. But if you're like me, and you're like, okay, there's less than 7 seconds of Twin Snakes, reapply. Less than 5 seconds of Demolish, reapply. Then think about it that way. Let's move on to the next part. Alright, let's talk about Perfect Balance. Now, Perfect Balance is a skill that'll grant you 3 stacks of Perfect Balance, which is essentially 3 stacks of Formless Fist, more or less. It allows you to cast 3 GCDs in a row of any form, and they will give you their form as a chakra. So, for example, you cast an Oppo GCD, you're going to get an Oppo chakra. You cast a Raptor GCD, you're going to get a Raptor chakra. You cast a Curl GCD, yeah, I hope you get it by now. You get a Curl chakra. And the reason why that matters is because Perfect Balance, after you use all 3 charges, grants you Masterful Blitz. Now, this secondary aspect of it only comes into play at level 60. However, this job only really comes alive at level 60 plus, because until then, Perfect Balance isn't really used for much. And below the time you get Perfect Balance, the job really is just kind of figure out what buttons to press. But, as you can read on Masterful Blitz here, the amount of Beast Chakras you get in terms of their typing determines what skill you get to use. Let's look at the actual skills, and we'll talk about the good ones and the ones that you want to avoid. So it says, 1 Beast Chakra type, you use Elixir Field. That means that you will do this AoE, that is 600 potency, and then 70% less for all remaining enemies. It will also open the Lunar Nadi. That is something that matters later on, but the general idea is that it opens the Lunar Nadi. We're going to skip these 3 in the middle for now, because at a higher level they typically won't matter, except Celestial Revolution. But we're going to skip them for now. We'll go back to Celestial Revolution, okay? Let's talk about Rising Phoenix now. Rising Phoenix is something that will grant you the Solar Nadi, which is obviously the opposite of the Lunar, right? Well, if you read Masterful Blitz, to cast Rising Phoenix, it is 3 Beast Chakra type. The same way that Elixir Field is 1 Beast Chakra type. So example, you want to cast Elixir Field, do Dragon Kick, Boot Shine, Dragon Kick, right? Simple, or if you have the proc, Boot Shine, Dragon Kick, Boot Shine. Because that way you get to do basically the most amount of damage possible to use Elixir Field. Now, why those? They're the highest potency. Snap Punch is 310 potency, sure, but Boot Shine is 310 with a guaranteed crit, and Dragon Kick is 320 flat. So technically speaking, you're always going to be wanting to use your Perfect Balances on as many Oppo GCDs as you can, especially for when you want to cast Elixir Field and get the Lunar Nadi. Now for Rising Phoenix, it's different because you want 1 of each. As it said, you want 3 types of them. So, quite often, you'll use Perfect Balance and Rising Phoenix to essentially refresh your buffs, to make sure that Rising Phoenix goes off with all buffs intact, as well as your damage over time buff being reapplied to the boss underneath party buffs. Because in case you can't guess it, you will be using Perfect Balance under your party buffs so that you can cast 2 Perfect Balances, and so 2 Masterful Blitzes underneath Brotherhood and Riddle of Fire at the 2-minute windows, and at the odd-minute windows you will be wanting to use 1 Perfect Balance underneath Riddle of Fire. There's probably going to be a read cut in the video, but that's because this part has been so hard for me to record. Predominantly because just the massive amount of information. So we've talked about Elixir Field and Rising Phoenix, and we talked about how Elixir Field gives you a Lunar Naughty, and Rising Phoenix gives you a Solar Naughty. Well, let's talk about the skill that I chose to ignore that does actually matter, and it's Celestial Revolution. Celestial Revolution will by default open the Lunar Naughty, but if it's already open, it will open the Solar Naughty instead. What does this mean? Celestial Revolution is your pity. It's a consolation prize. If you screwed up, take this. It's only 450 potency. It's not AoE. So it is worse than Elixir Field, worse than even Flint Strike, definitely worse than Rising Phoenix, and definitely worse than Phantom Rush. And Tornado Kick is its own thing. For those of you who are confused as to why I'm ignoring Flint Strike and Tornado Kick, Flint Strike just turns into Rising Phoenix, Tornado Kick just turns into Phantom Rush. So they are effectively the same thing, so I will use the higher level version of them to discuss them, because it's just easier, because those are the names I'm used to. The Celestial Revolution is literally a pity button for if you screwed up and you only did 2 Beast Chakra types, you get Celestial Revolution. If you already have a Lunar, it's fine. It gives you, a Solar Naughty. If you don't have any Naughty, it's fine. It gives you a Lunar. The only time it's a problem is if you accidentally screw up and cast Celestial Revolution first, and then you mess up and hit Elixir Field afterwards, because you will accidentally have 2 Lunar Naughty. But if you're a good monk, you'll be able to fix that on the fly. If you're not a good monk, you'll probably have a meltdown like I did when I first learned. It's a lot to keep up with. The bottom line is you want to avoid Celestial Revolution at all costs, so be very careful when you use Perfect Balance to make sure you hit the right GCDs. Like I said, they're all about hitting these under party buffs because Masterful Blitzes are your strongest abilities. Now, why am I talking so much about the Naughty? Well, when you have one of each is when you get to cast your big skill, Phantom Rush or Tornado Kick. Now read the description carefully here. It says 3 Beast Chakra and both Naughty. They left out types. That is important. So while the most optimal way to use your Perfect Balance and your Solar and Lunar Naughty to get off at a Phantom Rush is to use Perfect Balance to go Dragon Kick, Boot Shine, Dragon Kick, or Boot Shine, Dragon Kick, Boot Shine if you already have the proc. However, if you've gotten off in your rotation, if you've gone through some downtime during your burst window, you can use whatever. You can reapply Twin Snakes to make sure Masterful Blitz has it. You can reapply Demolish to make sure it doesn't drop off. You can use Dragon Kick. You can hit any combination thereof, but that is not the optimal way to do it. The optimal way is to reapply all of your buffs properly, then use Perfect Balance to use 3 Oppo GCDs for the highest amount of potency underneath your burst window. But it does have kind of a built-in failsafe of if you mess up, if you realize your damage buff's going to drop off, if you realize your dot dropped off, you can just kind of hit those buttons. It is just suboptimal, and I do not recommend it. I'm just trying to give you as much information as I possibly can. So, you get the basic ideas now, right? I've talked about how Masterful Blitz functions. I've talked about how the GCD's forms function. Let's talk about a combo of your party utility and your party buffs. Well, we're going to just very quickly go through your party utility. First and foremost, you have Feint like every other person. You have Thunderclap to be able to dash around the battlefield without needing to use it for damage. You have Mantra to boost HP recovery via healing actions. Only GCDs, by the way. Only GCD heals. But still, it helps. And then you have Riddle of Earth. Riddle of Earth is an ability that has saved my skin more times than I can count during prog because of the fact that it just gives you 20% flat damage reduction. That is the same as a tank cooldown. Riddle of Earth makes you beefy. Now, it only lasts for 3 GCDs, and with how fast Monk's GCDs are, that is probably around 6 seconds. But you have 3 stacks, so you can effectively get like 15-ish seconds of Riddle of Earth out, even if you flub it up a bit. It's a very useful skill. Its description's a little confusing, but the bottom line is you get 20% damage reduction while it's up. After 3 GCDs, you should probably reapply it if you need it again. Let's talk about your personal buffs and your party buffs, though, and how that matters in learning Monk at a higher end, and how that matters in context with Masterful Blitz and your Perfect Balances, because this is very important. During your opener, you will be using both Riddle of Fire and Brotherhood. And there are 2 ways you can do your opener. I will be talking about the double solar one later, because that is essentially specialized information. I'm someone who toyed around with it a lot when I first learned Monk, and it worked out for the most part, but just do Lunar Solar. And so when you go through your opener with both your buffs up, you'll have your Riddle of Fire and your Brotherhood out. You'll want to use Perfect Balance to get both the Solar and Lunar Naughty up. You'll want to start by either using Rising Phoenix or Elixir Field, and then you will want to use the other one afterwards. Now, the full monk opener is something I'm going to very quickly go through right here. It's something that I basically have memorized, even though I can't actually remember how it functions. But as you can see, I'm going to go through it, and you start by getting the Lunar Naughty by immediately going for your elixir field. You'll apply Riddle of Wind. Riddle of Wind is just a fancy button that gives you more attack speed. It's really good. Then you'll use your elixir field, and then you'll use your second stack of perfect balance here to go for your solar Naughty. And because of that, you'll be ending your opener with two stacks here, one of each, right? You'll be ending your opener with both a solar and lunar Naughty. And then you'll basically be in your filler window. And your filler window is basically just going through your combo over and over again using the Forbidden Chakra. The second you have all 5? Is that 5 or 6 chakras? I can never remember. 5 chakras available. Because it is something that will easily overcap because you are guaranteed crits through Boot Shine, and Monk, because of that, uses crit in their Bis a lot. I believe you sit around like 21 or 2200 here at Bis. It has been 2200 at Bis without even eating my food. It's a lot. But so now, I would have been going through the fight and fighting stuff, and now I'm at the 1 minute window, right? You can see 60 seconds have passed. I'm now about to have Riddle of Fire reapply, right? So Riddle of Fire would reapply, and I'd use all of this duration to go through all sorts of stuff, right? I'd use all the time to just kind of keep hitting stuff. And then typically, like right before Riddle of Fire ends here, we're going to use a stack of perfect balance. And we'll go Boot Shine, Dragon Kick, Boot Shine because of how my stuff turned out, and we'll hit Phantom Rush underneath that Riddle of Fire during that odd minute window. That's the gist of Monk. Especially if you're going with the standard Lunar Solar method of play. You will do both during your opener, and you will use Phantom Rush during your odd minute windows. It is technically the easiest and most simplistic way to talk about the job, so that's what I'm trying to show you here. Let's talk a bit in more specialized stuff in this next section. This stuff is for people who already understand the basics of Monk, and you're looking to optimize the job. So let's talk about double solar. Now this is Monk optimization, stuff that you should not do if you are just learning the job. This is stuff that you should do if you understand your kill times, you understand how fast the boss is going to die, and typically you are playing with a static. Now, what is the difference between Lunar Solar and Double Solar? Lunar Solar involves using Elixir Field and Rising Phoenix in your opener, so that during the odd minute windows you will hit Phantom Rush, and during the even minute windows you will use Elixir Field and Rising Phoenix again. Now, there is a form of optimization that changes your opener, but risks the risks losing a usage of Phantom Rush. We're leaving that flub in. By God, we're leaving that in. So what does that mean? In place of going Elixir Field into Rising Phoenix in your opener, you'll just use 2 Rising Phoenixes. Now, how does that look? It's been a minute since I've done it, but if I recall correctly, it is basically an early popping of perfect balance into more or less an early Rising Phoenix there, so that you do indeed just get 2 Rising Phoenixes in your opener, because they're just higher potency. I think I screwed up the placement of the second Twin Snakes, but you get the idea. The idea is that you use 2 Rising Phoenixes in your opener, because they're 1, higher potency. It's an extra 100 potency. And 2, during your odd minute window, you'll only be using Elixir Field, which is your lowest potency Masterful Blitz. During that odd minute window, when there's no other party buffs around, especially nowadays after the ninja change, you'll be using Elixir Field underneath your Riddle of Fire in place of Phantom Rush. What does that mean for Monk as a job? That means during the next 2 minute window, you will start by using a Phantom Rush for the highest damage ability you have, which will typically be underneath all the party buffs that your party has to offer. And then you'll also use your Rising Phoenix underneath all those party buffs, which is once again the higher potency things. So it takes away a usage of a Lunar Naughty throughout the fight, but you will have bigger hits during your burst windows. However, if you lose a usage of Phantom Rush across the course of the fight by ending the fight with a Solar and Lunar Naughty, the opener will not have been worth it, because Phantom Rush is so much damage as a skill that, with the way that the job works, that essentially if Phantom Rush doesn't get used as many times as it can throughout the fight, it's more worthwhile to just do Lunar Solar and hit Phantom Rush without all the party buffs. Now, this is something that you shouldn't really consider too heavily if you're not going for optimization, if you're not playing with a party with a lot of party buffs, because that's the time that makes this really shine. and you just generally don't know how fast you're going to kill the boss. If you're going to kill the boss in between like 6 and 7 minutes, for example, you should probably use double solar opener, because that way you just know that you will end with having a single solar naughty in the bank, which is fine. It's something that works better the more party buffs your party has, though. So, for example, my static throughout most of this tier ran Monk Dragoon, Paladin Warrior, Astrologian, and Sage with Dancer and Red Mage. So, me being the monk and being the highest personal damage job got like 7 buffs pumped into me. I got 5% damage from Red Mage, I got 5% damage from Dragoon plus the crit buff, I get an extra 5% damage from Dancer as well as its crit buff, as well as getting cards from Astrologian and their Divination. So all of this was being pumped into me, so I would do the double solar version of the opener, because that would mean that during those burst windows my Phantom Rushes would be critting for 80 to 100k if I was getting really, really lucky. I believe the highest numbers I saw during P4S prog would typically be upwards of 80k, depending on how the fight was going and how pot windows were working out. But I'm giving you this information so that you have it and you know when to not use the information about double solar. Please look these things up for yourself. Please find the giant pile of warnings about them. And please do not worry about all the people that's saying, it's going to be only like a 0.1% gain. If you want to do it and you want to try it to see if you will perform better as a result, go for it. However, on average, Lunar Solo is just easier to handle. It has a simpler rotation, and you don't have to early recap your damage buff or dot sometimes to make all of your stuff fit in your burst windows proper. So that's the gist of it. That's Monk, but in a much more detailed manner. I hopefully helped you understand the job better. Hopefully helped you get a better grasp on it, and hopefully helped you understand why it's my favorite job right now. Barely behind Reaper. Just barely, but that's because Reaper's really easy to play, and I like easy to play jobs. Don't let people telling you oh, if you play at this GCD, make sure you lock your frames to 60 FPS. Or, oh, you have to learn about optimal drift to be good at Monk. As someone who's still learning about Monk and still performing pretty well, all of that is minor, super top-end optimization that only matters if you're trying to be the top 100 monk in the world. Locking your frames to do better at keeping your Riddle of Fire from drifting? Really? You're going to lock your frame rate to make sure that a certain skill doesn't drift at all so that you can optimally play the job better. If you're going into that much effort, you're probably not watching this video, for one. But for another, you already know more than enough about the job, and if that's something that you're reading and finding out about, you don't need to worry about it. And that's something that scares people away from Monk. The general complexity of its base kit being forms, not combos, the weirdness that is Masterful Blitz giving you this random extra thing in your gauge, the weirdness that is Perfect Balance being a 40-second cooldown, the weirdness of the timings of Forbidden Chakras, the way that Six-Sided Star works. All these things kind of throw people off from the job, but Monk is at its core a very simplistic job, and I hope I've somewhat proven that to you. The part that is complex is the explanations for how things function at their core. Masterful Blitz. You want a Lunar Naughty? 1 Beast Chakra type. Use triple Oppo under Perfect Balance. You want a Solar Naughty? 3 Beast Chakra types under Perfect Balance. You want to use Phantom Rush / Tornado Kick? 3 Beast Chakras, period. Not even types, just period. Under Perfect Balance. But I wanted you to have, you the viewer here, to have a good handle on how the basics of this job worked, so that you could maybe understand the job better and hopefully understand my enjoyment of it. I don't think this job was that difficult to get a handle on. Me playing the job from level 80 to 90 and leveling it helped me understand it pretty well, personally. And I think a lot of people just make an effort to almost not learn the job when it comes to playing Monk, simply because it has such a strange first look compared to any of the other melees. I think it's a lot of fun. I hope you enjoy it too. But that will be it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or comments or concerns, leave them in the comments. If you want other great resources about Monk, go to the Balance. They're the people that post in all of the Monk channels in the Balance have helped me a lot in terms of just the guides they've provided. If you want to go look at them for an extra look on stuff, please go look at it. They're very good. I personally learned a lot from them. For now, thanks for watching. Subscribe if you like it and want to see more. Like it if you like it. Dislike it if you didn't. Regardless of all that, I hope to see you in the next one.